Good. It's wonderful to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So, before we get into your revolutionary brain tap, I want to begin with this. 6 years ago, we look at the calendar mid March, everything changed with COVID. How did you get through the coronavirus era, and how has it changed the way that you approach life and work today?
Well, actually, at first we thought it was going to be catastrophic for our business because most of the time I'm out speaking at conventions and conferences and telling people about the product because a lot of people don't understand the science. So I was running around doing that. But what we found was online took over, and we actually had one of our best years ever that year because stress is such a contributing factor to all of these things, and we have a great solution. So we mobilized our doctors and our group of people out there. We have 120,000 users. So at that time, we had about 60,000. So we doubled since then. And we gave away a free app. And we said, hey, if you need help with de-stressing, use this algorithm. It's going to downregulate your nervous system. It's going to help you get through this. And it's going to upregulate your basically your immune response because when your body's under stress, it actually suppresses your immune system. So we need to keep the body open and available to do the job that the body's designed to do.
So let's get into the work that you do specifically on a daily basis. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of 13-year-olds. It's career day. And one of the kids wants to know what you do for a living. How do you synthesize and make it make sense to them?
What we do is we're software engineers for the human mind. If your best thinking isn't getting you what you want, we help fix that. But the beauty is that you have access to your own software, and it's as easy as your thoughts. But unfortunately, 90% of all thoughts are negative. So we help you to get rid of those negative thoughts and replace them with positive thoughts in an environment called brainwave entrainment, where your body's in a receptive state to accept, use, and benefit from those positive thoughts that you'll now start to think.
So when you were that age, when you were a kid, what was your dream job? What did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, unknown to me, my mother passed away when she was 49, and she gave me a baby book. And actually, around that time, I wrote down I was going to be a millionaire psychologist. So I guess I did that. But I didn't know that because my dad was a chronic alcoholic, and he got help with something called the Silva method, which was a meditation practice. And then he taught it to us. And I saw my dad convert from a factory working alcoholic to a PhD psychologist helping people. So I guess that impressed upon my mind when I was about 10 years old and changed the way I think. I thought I was going to get into electronics. That's why people go, "You're a psychologist. Why'd you build this electric gadget?" And I said, "Well, my first love was electronics. I was a geek. I loved tinkering with things, building things. When CB radios were popular, I was Captain Kidd, KTH 7324. I still remember all the call signs, and that was my life. I was one of those weird kids that would do that kind of thing.
So what about sports? Were you a big sports fan growing up?
Yeah, I wasn't initially, but I knew to get out of the house to please my dad, I had to tell him I was going to be captain of the football team. He told
Yeah.
me, "Hey, faith without works is dead," and he had me read a book called As a Man Thinketh, and he made me start working out. I became a three-sport captain. And I got a track scholarship to Ferris State College in Michigan. I dislocated my shoulder in football, or I probably would have been playing for Western Michigan, but things work out. God has a plan. It doesn't always seem that way at first, but those things work out. But yeah, I mean, I just started figuring out that if you work your body will respond in amazing ways. And I went from like a 98-pound weakling in of my freshman year to basically all city, just tearing it up on the football field till I got hurt, and then wrestling I did really well, and then in track, of course, I excelled at. I actually never lost a track race till the last race of my senior year in the state finals when I got to run against Detroit, the guys from Detroit, and I wasn't up to that task, but I did run a good race, but that wasn't.
Well, with a lot of what you're talking about, when you like try to reshape your mind, is the cornerstone or is it some of the nuts and bolts that 90-day habit thing? It's about your mind's a muscle at the end of the day.
Mhm.
And it's just getting it to that place where it understands what you want to do. You get your once you get your mind going, your body will follow.
Right. Yeah. Well, this has been my life work, actually. My dad, I helped him do seminars until I got my my degree in my office and started working. And I've written 10 books about it now. My last book, Brain Fitness Blueprint, we talk about it like a muscle because it is very similar. If you don't run those neurons, there's those neurons that fire together, wire together. If you don't fire them, they unwire. So that means good habits or bad habits, they're all designed through something called neuroplasticity, where they're neuropruning or neurogenesis happening. So I think what happened to me was I started looking at my future differently. Instead of predicting my future out of my past, I started predicting my future out of what I wanted and desired and what were my actions today. And looked at my past as a proving ground, or as I tell people, everyone is a superhero. They just don't know they're at the dark night of the soul right now, and they need to get through that to build their superpowers. For me, it was learning that I wasn't stupid. I was held back in second grade. I was in all the special because I didn't care about that. I was an artist. I was an inventor kind of person even when I was young, and I didn't care about school. In fact, I knew that most of what I learned there was going to be useless. But then I realized, hey, it's a game. Let's play the game because when you do what you need to do, you can then do what you want to do, and that's the position I'm in right now.
Well, that's the thing that I think about with education. It is vital. And you get a lot of these kids that are like, why do I have to know geometry? Why do I have to know this? Why do I have to know that? It's not going to be practical, but it's really about almost doing exercises as an athlete. What you're doing is you're getting your body ready because I think a lot of people, after they're done with high school or college or whatever they're doing, they take this breather and they don't go through the rigors that you would typically do. And I think that's essential, like you're saying, to keep those dendrites and those synapses firing.
Yeah, if you don't challenge the brain, it will unwire. When you were born, Joe, you were the smartest you're ever going to be. You had a 100 neural bit processor, it was fully wired, and it was running at 18.1 volts. As we age, it usually regulates about to 10.1 volts, and usually less than a third of the brain is wired. So that means that we have about a third capacity. So if we don't challenge the brain, we don't get neurogenesis. In our study we did actually in Florida with dementia, with 55, 65-year-old women that were diagnosed with dementia, we showed that if we could help them through brainwave entrainment and get their brain voltage up, once we got their brain voltage above 7, they no longer had dementia symptoms. If you drop below 4, you have Alzheimer's symptoms. It's all an energy equation. So, how do we keep the mitochondria, the physical body working? And it's beyond food. It's not supplements that they're missing. It's actually the brain's frequencies and getting the brain to balance and do that. Now, some people claim they can do it with meditation. And I'm here to tell you, I've scanned 30,000 brains. I've only met 2 people. So, and some of them were pretty big deals. They would brag all the time. And I go through India and I'm amazed at how many. We have a piece of technology called NeuroCheck that I invented where we can measure the nervous system in 5 minutes and how many black brains we see in India. And they're meditating every day because meditation doesn't mean you're actually activating your brain circuits. A lot
Right.
of people think meditation is shutting down the brain. It isn't, it's awakening the brain to run these frequencies. And typically, what happens, you close your eyes, 1/3 of your brain shuts down because the visual pathways are what keep the brain active. So if you don't have retinal flashing or like meditating to a candle, people do that all the time. That keeps the brain active. That's why they did it until you can do it. So I tell people it's like riding a bike. You can't ride a bike until you get it up to speed, and then you got balance. But if your brain doesn't have the voltage, one of the biggest things we're seeing in the world today is sleep. 2/3 of the world isn't sleeping. It's not because they don't want to sleep. It's because they don't have the energy to sleep.
Yeah.
You've probably heard the expression, my kids are too tired to sleep. Well, most adults are too tired to sleep. They're too tired to meditate. Because it takes a lot of brain activity. And we do more neurological work when we're sleeping, by the way, than when we're awake. So in essence, we're smarter when we're sleeping than we are when we're awake.
One of my favorite poets threw out a line that said, "We're born geniuses and buried idiots." It's the
Yeah.
reason why kids always have this ephemeral glow about how they go about things. I was reading an article years ago about doing watercolor classes in senior living centers. And the reason why they do it is it's been proven that it will actually grow back broken avenues of synapses in your brain. It's actually about activating, it's about having an active mind and doing things. I mean, is that true as you get older to abate that possibility of dementia?
That's actually true at all ages. One thing is that we're seeing it in the AI era. I actually was just interviewed on Fox, become one of their brain guys, and they were talking to me about this is the first generation that is actually stupider than their parents. I mean, and the reason is that they think they're smart because they have a smartphone. They can get them to Google, and they're actually finding the brain is rewiring not to the information. Like when you and I were in school, we had to learn information and regurgitate it, right? They're learning where the information is. So their brain is actually being retrained to run like a Google search engine instead of a goal-striving organism or a solution-oriented machine. So the process, I think AI is great, don't get me wrong, but you can't let it do the work for you. It
Yep.
can be an assistant, it's kind of like your subconscious. It's a great servant, but a bad master.
Yeah.
And they've even proven that in school when that university students use AI, they were stupider than the people that didn't use AI because they thought AI was right. AI is just a set of it's machine learning. So it's not really even learning, it's machine recall. So they put all this data out there and then how the search engine compiles it. And you've got to have the intelligence. I think that the future is going to belong to the creative geniuses, those people that can see beyond what's in front of them and kind of see how can I leverage this technology to make me smarter and faster, but not replace me. I mean, so many people are afraid. Well, get educated. You're not going to be replaced. Nobody can replace creativity.
Yep.
Somebody's going to, where we're sitting right now, even talking to ourselves over computers. I mean, this is all being done by some mythical, magical thing. I mean, it's all in the air right now. And somehow this computer is, through its technology, breaking it all down and reassembling you, similar to the way the brain works in different brain regions. So we're mimicking our biology in our external world through technology, but we still have the most powerful computer on earth, even if with AI. We have advanced AI. I
Yeah.
mean, what our subconscious does for us is no small thing. It's a huge thing that people overlook and they think that they're not smart or they're not this or that. They're super geniuses. They just need to activate those networks. And if you don't use them, you lose them.
Yep.
Just give you one example, Joe. My science officer speaks 6 languages. I took him to India. We were doing a tour of universities where we were doing research. And by the third week, he started speaking Hindi. And I said, Francisco, when did you learn Hindi? He said, we've been here for 3 weeks. And then it dawned on me, his brain circuit for learning languages never shut down.
Wow.
But what we know in neuroscience is if you don't learn a second language by the time you're 7, that circuit actually shuts down. It's still there, but it takes a lot of energy to restart that engine and do it. But for him, because he uses these languages all the time, he speaks to, Italian, Portuguese, all these different languages now. A little, he says, I only speak a little bit of Hindi, but he was passing off as they go, wow, I didn't know you spoke Hindi because his circuit was there. We didn't learn how to speak by listening to a lecture and listening to books. We learned from the field. And they've proven that at NIH. They said we all have a biofield. And this is where the information about you exists, not in your body. Your body is more of a transmitter and a receiver than it is a store of information. That's why people get confused about short-term working memory and long-term memory, and they start to say, "Oh, I have a senior moment." Well, no, you have too much stress. You're holding on to too many pieces of information. You don't have a problem with your brain. You have a problem with recovery. Most people don't realize the secret. And our favorite brain tapper is Tom Brady, and he says, for every 1 minute of exertion, you need 2 minutes of recovery. Well, we're all part of something called the human race. I want you to think about it as a human racing.
Yeah.
We get up in the morning and we're like looking down the track. We got to run the 100-yard dash. We look at the starter and say, "Hey, I didn't train for this."
Yeah.
And the reality is, what are you pretending not to know?
Yeah.
Deepak Chopra says 98% of what we're going to experience tomorrow we know about today. So start training. And your brain is one thing that most people forget to train because they think it's fixed. It's not. It's neuroplastic, meaning that it's changing all the time.
It's interesting you bring up Tom Brady because I remember at one point he was talking about the key to his success is he always views the first day of the training camp is the first day that he's starting his job that season. And he always views lifting that trophy up at the end of the Super Bowl as the last day. That's in his brain. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of things that he's talked about that are a part of that mind over matter thing, which is why he's so effective. Obviously, he works hard, he trains, he does all that, but I think there's a part of him that's mastered this level of saying this is the way I view the season. Some other people think when you get to playoff mode, that's another part of the season. He doesn't think that. It's a continuation. And he always talks about pacing. I remember he was like, it's all about pacing. Yeah, you're going to lose games. Things are going to go certain ways. But if you pace like a good runner in a marathon, you're going to be okay.
Yeah. I think the big deal is that the smarter people win. even in the even in that Braun game where, you took all the quarterbacks in history, he would not be in the top 100
Yeah.
as far as his physical look. But when you look at his pinpoint passing, reading defenses, and preparing for the game, and all those things, he did the mental side of the game. Because really, when I work with a lot of the Olympic athletes we saw this year, we're using BrainTap, and when I got to see them perform, the difference is that 6 inches between your ears, because
Mhm.
almost everybody at that level is the same. They have an opportunity to break that record, or they're right around there. It's the person that can, one, recover from injury, because these are tough sports. They're pushing their bodies to the limits. The other is to put the past behind you. I still remember the game where Tom Brady threw those three interceptions in the Super Bowl, came out and threw four and won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Most quarterbacks would have folded under the pressure, but he looks at every half as a new game. He didn't have any interceptions.
Yeah.
He walked out on the field just as if he had a clean slate. And too many people bring the past. I call it the dragons of the past, because people drag them on and drag them on and drag them on. You want to let them go and just release them from your conscious reality.
There's almost a part of it too where you have to like not get stuck in the headlines. You can't look at the news. You almost have to go into it fresh, like Picasso, so to speak. I don't think all of those early painters and creators were looking at what everybody else was doing. They were just going in like I remember going to the Pantheon and looked up at that hole and I was like, it's still a mystery. And I'm thinking they didn't have all these distractions. There was a level of pure thought that went into what they did. They weren't thinking about what the next person was doing. They were thinking about things from a pure engineering standpoint, and it shined. It was just a part of their reality.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the important thing is that, and Buddha said it over 5,000 years ago, all unhappiness stems from unfavorable comparisons. So, when you think about, you're only judged against yourself and by yourself, because unless you give people the power to control how you feel or do, or what they're, I love it. A friend of mine, she calls herself the queen of biohacking. She's very out there. She has no filters. She's doing her thing. And somebody told her that they didn't like that. And she said, well, it's a good thing that your opinion doesn't count.
Yeah.
And what can they say to that? It's
Yeah.
like, who cares what they say? So many people, a lot of times, and when I'm doing counseling, and what's in the brain tap protocol is, your brothers, sisters, preachers, teachers, you know, all family members, whoever's around you, they don't have the right to predict your future.
Yeah.
They have a say, but they don't have a vote. And most people give them the vote. In fact, the expression I give people is, most people are on the bus, handcuffed to the back. Freddy Krueger's driving, and they keep complaining. And the key to those handcuffs are in their pocket. All they need to do is take the handcuffs off, kick Freddie off the bus, and get the right people on the bus with them, because we need a community.
Yeah.
If you feel like you're out of control, then the first step is to get back in control. And there's some really key things you can do, and that's getting your brain, or a lot of people call it mindset, but you can't have a good mindset without energy, and that's where the light, sound, and vibration comes in. We need to increase voltage in the brain so people can make better decisions, because the more stress, and of course the poor foods people eat, the
Yep.
the EMF, all these things are real problems. But the beauty of today's society is we have solutions for every one of them.
Well, and that's the thing I was going to ask too is we're in definitely an age of enlightenment. There's all this negativity. There all of these things that you see in the news is just dragging us down. But in reality, we live in an unbelievable time period of medical advancements. Technology's moving. We're inside the peanut butter jar right now with the AI, the things that are happening. And then like you said, all of these things are reversible very easily in very holistic ways to get our brains to a place where it's operating at a higher level.
Right. Yeah. The key is, you can't find a pill for every ill. It's
Right.
impossible. In fact, I have a saying, you can't have the pill without the skill. We did a study with opioids down in Brazil, because everybody thinks opioids are the solution, but they're also a big problem, right? People get addicted. So what we did, they wouldn't let me have the group not have opioids. So my group that did opioids at the same time as doing brain tap, and the other group just did opioids. After the surgery, we said 30 days, because opioids are only approved for 30 days of use. That's it.
Yeah.
They're not approved for long term, for the rest of your life thing. And SSRIs are only approved for 14 days. Go figure that. So
Yeah.
as you go into the future, so what happened was, at 30 days, we told our group, okay, you're done with the opioids. Just keep doing your brain tap every day, because we downregulate. You have opioid receptors in your brain that are far more powerful than any pill they're going to give you. If
Yeah.
you can trigger that opioid response, You get a buzz, you get a high. In fact, there's a really good book by John Marshall called Finding Your Perfect High. And the pharmacy is inside your head. It's inside every muscle. It's inside the cells of your body. If we can unlock that neurochemistry, you won't need those external things. Pain is not natural to the body once it's done, but the trauma of it can send us like phantom pain and things. We work with a lot of veterans that have that. And it's basically just turning off the switch. It's not happening anymore. But because those glia cells that locked into that pain are not unlocking. And part of that equation is sleep. If you don't sleep well, you don't unlock those glia cells. These cells, think of it like, Joe, you and I are at a networking party. We're shaking everybody's hands. At the end of the night, we're going to wash our hands. Well, every day, these glia cells are putting together these connections saying, yeah, I know that. That's true. That's not true. Whatever. Blah, blah, blah. We're making all these connections. And then at night, when we go to sleep, they should all unlock because the spinal fluid flows up and the skull actually breathes. Every cell is breathing, not just your lungs. You're respirating. And so you're getting this blood flow and you're getting the cerebral spinal fluid washing over the cells. And that's cleaning you out. And that's called deep level 4 sleep. If they're not getting, if somebody out there is not getting level 4 sleep, like we did in our study in Australia with coal miners, the average coal miner before we started the study got 1 minute of deep sleep and they were in bed for 10 hours. Time in bed does not equal sleep. In fact, if you have a sleep metric, you should get 1 hour of deep sleep, 2 hours of REM, and you can get by in as little as 5 hours. Now, in peak performance studies, they showed 6.5 hours as optimal, not 8, not 5,
Yep.
but that means you might be 7, you might be 8, you might be 4. So figure out what your sleep cycle is to get that metric. That's the only thing that really matters because that level 4 will detox the brain. That REM sleep will compartmentalize, organize, and begin to predict your future because that's what we're doing. We're predicting our future.
So what gets you up every day to do this work at a high level? I mean, you have to keep up on things, you're changing lives, you have your own soul to take care of. What is that energy every day for you?
Well, I get up every morning when I'm home and do a cold plunge, and I do usually three of them, go back and forth to my sauna and cold plunge. That gives me a lot of time to think. And I like to think. I'm one of those guys that likes to just muse and come up with things because I think it was part of my time when I was an artist, just kind of thinking about things. And then once I have that done, I'm going to think about it's not me, it's we. How can we all get out of here? Because in the reality is that nobody gets out of here alive. And I was helped by my dad getting help, right? So I'm like second generation, assisted by doing some kind of meditation, relaxation practices. And I believe that everyone needs to learn brain fitness. It's just like physical fitness. And something amazing happened to me in the 1970s. I was at a Catholic school and we raised money to buy barbells for our gym. We didn't have a weight room. This is before everybody out there probably going, "What do you mean you didn't have a weight?" We didn't have a weight room in our school, right? Mothers actually petitioned to us to the school to not let us put that weight room in because there was evidence showing that lifting weights causes you to stunt your growth. I mean, so here we are with brain fitness right now. People don't believe it because it's so easy. And it's something you can do daily. And it's something really you must do daily because there's only one way we're going. You're either going to have dementia and have somebody else take care of you, or you're going to maintenance your brain. You're going to keep it going because I've never met an ancient tradition like an Indian tribe or ancient culture that kept the wisdom of the tribe with the youngsters. They kept it with the elders.
Yeah.
So that must mean we're doing something wrong here in America. Our brain is getting abused by the foods we consume, by the lack of movement that we're in, by not doing it. And I'm not talking about Sudoku and all these other brain games. Those stress the brain.
Yeah.
Just like exercise. When you exercise, Joe, you create something called BDNF, which is great. We recommend everyone have movement therapy, exercise, muscle build, because that's going to trigger the brain. And think of BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factor, as miracle growth for the brain. So, but most people run off after they exercise. Sit for 5 to 10 minutes. Do some breathing. Just visualize your muscles repairing because the more time you spend there, at least up to 10 minutes, now those neural pathways can be developed. If you just jump up and go right back to your stress, driving your car away from the workout center or go back to what you're doing, the brain reorganizes right then and you don't get the benefit. That's why in India, they say that the most important pose in yoga is the death pose or that the savasana that they do at the end of the yoga, because everything else was getting it ready for the brain. The brain does everything. So, and so
Yeah.
many people think it's the muscles. The muscles don't move without the brain telling them.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so here we go.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? You've mentioned meditation. I know that's a big catchphrase, and there's a lot of people that do it. I was listening to a book by Joseph Campbell, and he was talking about how people, if you have levels of benevolence or empathy that go through your head, where you just think about loving your child, or think about loving a spouse, or think about the good in this world, that's a level of meditation. I think sometimes people get confused. But is that true in our regular daily lives? We can tap into that.
Yeah, one of the most incredible findings about 14 weeks ago, MIT came out with a study that showed the human thought extends 10,000 miles away from the user, and it seems to go into a web like the World Wide Web. We're
Wow.
talking about consciousness.
Yeah.
So they know, imagine, and they call it the Maharishi effect. So if somebody wants to look, we're not going to go into it here, but you can
Yeah.
look it up on YouTube. But imagine everyone in a state of, like you're saying, compassion, love, and even if it's just for yourself right now,
Right.
because a lot of people don't love themselves. They're so angry and upset, and they don't realize you're doing the best you can. But that phonetic energy is actually being broadcast through their body. And this is something your listeners might, I'm not asking you to believe me, this is science. Keep your beliefs for Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Every cell of your body right now, right this very minute, the reason I can see you, Joe, and you can see me is I'm emitting light. My body at the mitochondrial level is emitting 8, 10 nanometer light, like the healing light you read about and hear about. You project that light. Now, we know that when we look at life as a threat, that light diminishes. In fact, during COVID, they did a study that showed 200 times less light coming from the heart center because your heart is a magnetic pulse that goes through the body. Is actually pulsing and giving instruction sets to the body up to 2 times more instructions than the body gives the heart. So the number one brain really is your heart. There's 40,000 brain cells in your heart, and they think and they act and they respond. And then the next level gut is your gut. Most people in meditation, what happens is you're 54% not human.
Yeah.
I don't care. I mean, what you're talking about 2002 or 2000, what they did was they introduced another alien pathogen into our bodies, and we already have a bunch of them. So there's a war going on inside of us. That's stressful. Now, if you have a really good immune system, what happens is the white marker cells step up and they can kill anything. When you think of Wim Hof, and for those that don't know who he is, just type in Wim Hof breathing. They actually injected poison into this man. He breathed it out of his body, and he's not a guru,
Wow.
and he has taught other people to do it. So we have a pretty ingenious body that's able to eject poisons out of it, not in a state of stress though, because we downregulate. Even this is another MIT that was done about 6 months ago. They said that 54 generations of our ancestors are controlling our DNA, not just us. So, and then in the Hopi Indians said 7 years. So it's kind of interesting how that works. But
Yeah.
then they said every 40 seconds, every DNA pair in your body is changing based on everything from the food you consume, the water you drink, the room you're in, the thoughts you think, the people you hang around. So your body is either, and they said if you upregulate, which means you look at life as a challenge rather than a threat, you actually upgrade to the highest level DNA. But if you think of it as a threat, you downregulate. So that means that you're actually becoming less of who you are.
Yeah. That's amazing. So let me ask you this. At the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, clients, readers of your books, everyone that consumes what you put out, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I'm the guy that's still working on himself. I feel like every morning is the first day of school and I'm smelling crayons and new ink on the paper. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm definitely not finished. And I feel like unless I share and educate people and help other people, I'm just not fulfilled. And I think that I would be known as the person that does what he says and says what he does, and I'm very transparent about that. I mean, uh, I had a friend who wanted to get up cocaine, and I said, only if you come and live with me and do everything I do for the next 30 days will I help you.
Yeah.
Because if I had a center, which I'm building here called Mystic Pines, which will be available, it's not even in construction yet, but I have the property. people have to come and live that environment,
Yeah.
but live life skills, not just come and have meetings and talk about your problems. And, if AA helped you, if you're one of the 2% that it helped, God bless you. The
Yeah.
other 98%, they need more action. They
Yeah.
need more direction.
For sure. So, Dr. Porter, if anybody wants to tap into this brilliant brain tap, anything else that's going on in your world, your books, all the good business, where do they go?
Yeah, they can go to drpatrickporter.com and you'll scroll down, you'll see my newest book, Brain Fitness Blueprint, my co-author and I wrote for helping people. There's a 30-day plan in there. Now, also, if they want to go to trybraintap.com, there's a special link there that gives them 30 days free on my app. So, do an in one study. That means a study of one. And what I want you to measure is your sleep. You can download that for free for 30 days. You will not be billed until the 31st day. If you don't like it, just cancel it. But
Okay.
our average user uses it 27 times a month. And,
Wow.
I think the biggest thing is that so many people don't do something because they think they already know. And the reality is that just because you know something or don't know something doesn't mean it doesn't work. Gravity isn't dependent upon your belief in it.
Right.
So these are all things that are science based and they can go there and learn. And, if they want to follow me on Instagram or YouTube, I have a lot of different videos on these things. And I've interviewed some pretty unique people in the brain space.
I will put all these links in the show notes. What a wonderful, illuminating conversation. Thank you for your work. Thank you for taking a minute out, and best of luck. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.